Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining the demo day. So I'm Ankita and I'm an AI education intern with Vector. So I work closely with the Dharmat program. And I'm joined today by Prachi, who is also an AI education intern with Vector. So together we would like to present two small projects that we worked on. So the first of them is called a digital booklet, which is basically focused around the topic of anomaly detection. And I'll get more into the details now. So, what was the context or like the project motivation for this idea? Is let's say we have Alice, and she's working with Vector with one of the partner banking institution, and her supervisor has actually asked her to work on a POC on the area of anomaly detection. Now we have amazing boot camps with Vector that are around surrounded around the topic, but she's missed the boot camp. So what can we do now to kind of help Alice, support her team effectively? One idea for her would be to go back to the GitHub repo, but then again, what can we do to make it easier for her to understand all of this content in a very effective manner? So just to touch base on what is the topic, like what is anomaly detection? So it's basically like an outlier detection technique where you have, a lot of observations and you're trying to find out that one observation which might deviate from, the standard expected behavior. So for Alice, this might be in the area of fraud detection, where let's say she's working on credit card data and there's a particular user who hasn't been very active around that area, and then suddenly they start using their credit card, and maybe it's for a really large amount. So it is Alice's job to kind of detect that and tag that as fraud and then possibly report that to the organization. So this can also be used and extended in multiple different areas like retail and compliance, cybersecurity, quality control, and has multiple different applications. So we had a boot camp with Vector on anomaly detection last year. So all of the contents are basically, into this one central GitHub repo. And then the first solution for Alice would be to go through the repo and look at all the different contents out there and, see how she can effectively try and learn from that. But we wanted as AI education interns to, do something better to basically for her to navigate through these repo and get a better idea on how she can, structure her time effectively and learn as fast as possible. So we have the idea of creating something like a digital booklet. So essentially, it's like a web page that acts as a book and has, multiple different chapters, multiple different links, and it's a very easy to navigate, like an interactive environment for someone who's just getting started with different kind of AI topics. So anomaly detection is just one topic that, we decided, but there are different boot camps that happen around Vector, and this can be extended to different boot camps as well. So basically, what is a Jupyter book? So it's like an open source tool that facilitates building, web-based interactive coding environments. And then you can create an interactive book that can have like different kind of data. So if you're working around a Python file that has a lot of visualizations, you might be able to embed that in the notebook. If you have different media links, for example, you have a YouTube video on anomaly detection, you can also embed that in your notebook. And then you have different kind of Python live coding that happen. You're training a model and you want to see how the model is getting trained, what are the different epochs. So all of that can also be seen in this notebook. So what we essentially wanted to do, the crux is to basically transform all these bootcamp contents into an accessible educational resource. And these are just a few examples on the screen on how a booklet might look like. So this is not related to our topic, but this essentially how it looks like is like a web interface, has different kind of sections, and then you can just navigate through the links and just have like an interactive feel. So for us, the project was essentially, structured like this, where we found out our motivation for building this booklet, and we saw like how the business or the users could benefit from it. And then we started figuring out what AI topics can we look out for, and we figured out that anomaly detection bootcamp is something that would probably fit into our use case. And then we started building out a prototype. For us, the prototype was essentially getting all the contents from the anomaly detection bootcamp, like what different tutorials or demos were, covered during that session, and then start, structuring our GitHub to basically mirror a digital booklet. And then was the phase of user testing, where we had to basically look at access issues to the booklet, formatting of the content in a very user-friendly fashion, see if the image rendering, Google Colab issues, everything, getting everything sorted, and then essentially, document all the contents and basically hand off for the more advanced phase of the booklet, that is the phase 2. So just to show how the anatomy of a digital booklet essentially looks like is in a GitHub, you have, your different kind of content. So these could be like markdown files, HTML files, different kind of images file, and all of that structure into different folders. Now, on top of that, to render it into a booklet, you can have a GitHub workflow, and the workflow essentially consists of different configuration files. So the first one, which is a workflow file, is a file that essentially helps you spin up the booklet. So you can write multiple different configurations here, like which file, like which branch of your GitHub repo do you want to basically be the master branch? Where do you want to render your contents from? What is the URL where you want this file to be rendered? And then when do you want the notebook to be updated? So for example, I went ahead and wanted to change some contents into the anomaly detection folder. So will that content, be dynamically rendered now in my booklet? So all these kind of configurations could be set up into that file. And then we have another file, which is basically like a table of contents. So this essentially gives like a structure to your booklet. So the different kind of pages that would be there, how are the pages linked to each other, how do the chapters look like, and things like that. So it's essentially you already have the content in the GitHub, and then you're additionally adding some configuration to spin it up into an interactive booklet. That is the basic idea here. And then these are very like basic 3 steps that you have to follow. Once you have all of this present in your GitHub, the first thing that you do is structurize your content. So for us, in terms of anomaly detection, we saw that the bootcamp was focused on 4 different areas. That is graph anomalies, image anomalies, tabular anomalies, and video anomalies. So there were like 4 different data sets and 4 different tutorials happening around that area. So we wanted to structure our book to have 4 of these different contents. So basically, you kind of structure your GitHub into that fashion. And the second thing is building your book. That's essentially building out all of these configuration files that I talked about and basically change the configuration for it to work out with your booklet structure. And then the third thing is essentially running a GitHub Actions workflow that spins your booklet and then dynamically keeps on rendering it if you change any contents. And then ideally you have like a URL or like an HTML page that you can share with others and host it as a public site. So just coming back briefly to Alice now at this situation, she basically has different things that she could do in anomaly detection. Like she could work on graph data and she can try out some supervised, semi-supervised techniques or even unsupervised techniques in that area. And then she can also work with different data sets. There's an MVTech data set, there's a UCSD pedestrian data set or a UCF crime data set. So all of these contents are there in the GitHub, but now she's confused like where she should start. So we're going to try to help, for her to navigate through the booklet and possibly see if, she finds value in that. So currently the booklet is hosted on this link and it's like, public. So anyone can actually go and view the booklet. But I'll just run you guys with like a very brief idea of how it looks like right now. So this is essentially the landing page where this is mirrored from the README file that the GitHub currently has. So this will be like a landing page that talks about all different kind of things that were covered in the bootcamp. And then on the left-hand side, you kind of have a navigation pane. So you can go through all the 4 major topics that I talked about, the graph, image, tabular, and the video. And within this, we have structured it to have like the basic introduction to these topics, and then the different demos that were covered inside the topic. And then if you're on a specific page on the booklet, you also have the contents that kind of are that help you kind of navigate into different sections. So if I touch base on data sets, it will kind of give you different kind of ideas of what 4 data sets were touched base upon, and then you can go and basically know more about the specific data set. And now let's say I'm interested and I want to know more about graph anomaly detection. So I go here into this demo file, and this again gives me a different kind of structure that especially talks about the demo that happened on this specific data set. And then again, here you can have different kind of functionalities, like you can have Python files which are embedded, and all these were kind of executed during a part of the demo. So essentially, if I am interested to see different algorithms that were run or what kind of training did the algorithms go to, I can find all the code. And also, if you've rendered these files, like if these files were rendered during the demo and there was like an output, you can also see that what was the output that I got during that specific demo in the Vector Bootcamp. And then another cool thing that we have is you also have access to Colab. So we have like this small icon here that basically helps you launch Google Colab. So we can set it up through the GitHub API that allows you to reach to the Colab environment. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so with the correct authorization, you can spin it up on your own Google Colab instance, and then you can essentially go and run these files for yourself and then compare if you're able to basically train the models as were trained in the demo. So this is like an interactive feel that we are giving to the users. And on top of that, we have certain more additional functionalities, like you can also always go back to the repo if you're confused about a specific file and you need more information. You can download this entire booklet and package it into a Markdown file or a PDF file or even a Python notebook file and basically use it to circulate among your team members. And then you have like small different features, for example, turning this into a light or dark mode based on the base of user preference. And then you can search different things. For example, I am more interested in the MV Tech demo example. So I'm going to give a search here, and then you can see all the things related to that data set will be rendered here. So essentially what we're giving is the user a feel where they don't have to be, worried about a lot of coding structure here. This is like an easy to navigate environment. And once you feel comfortable around it, you can go into specific demos and kind of try them out yourself. So that was the main idea of our project. And taking it ahead from there. Yeah. So as I mentioned, a few highlights are having a very easy to understand, simple, navigatable, web interface with a lot of table of contents that gives you an idea about what the bootcamp was about and what specific topics you might be interested in. And then the flexibility to incorporate multi-source data. So in our case, we have images, we have graphs, we have different Python live coding examples and demo notebooks. And then you can interactively connect them to Google Colab. There are multiple different options. If you're not comfortable with Colab, there's also an option to incorporate it with Binder. So there are different kind of things that, can be possible on the notebook. And then there's a search bar that allows you to, find out specific terminologies and how they were used in the different anomaly detection bootcamp. And finally, you can download this as a PDF and kind of like export it or outsource it to different users. So currently, this is a draft of the notebook that we try to showcase to you, but we do have some ideas for phase 2. So currently, we are in the phase of documenting all the configuration changes we did for having this notebook deployed on the GitHub. The next idea is to improve the content of this notebook. So for example, this is just focused on one GitHub repo that Vector had on anomaly detection, but there are multiple different projects out there. For example, Vector had a project on computer vision, and in one of the subfolders for that, there was a small specific section dedicated to anomaly detection on video and image data. So if you want to kind of incorporate that, how can we do that in the current digital booklet that we have? That is one thing that we want to do. Then additional things could be if there's any more seminar talks, lecture series, or let's say some YouTube tutorials that kind of happen going ahead. How do we kind of dynamically embed then that onto the booklet? That is also one thing that we want to do. So finally, this was just a POC. So this is running on my GitHub. But then the next steps are also to kind of host it onto Vector's anomaly detection GitHub repo that is there for everyone to access. And then also on a wider scale, we would like to kind of launch this as an additional resource on the sponsor portal. So let's say for many different, people out there like Alice, who are basically do not have the time to basically, attend all 3 weeks of the boot camp for them, it might be a very important resource for them to just click and run through in their own free time and, try to learn about the different nuances of anomaly detection. So wrapping up, I would like to thank my team. That's Prachi, the AI education intern, and Michael and Sidef for, all their help for providing us the different kind of resources that were needed to kind of spin up this notebook. And with that, thank you very much for listening to my demo.
Any questions? I have a question on the first the notebook piece that Ankita showed. I'm just curious because the labs are often reused and kind of we add new reference implementations or whatnot. So I'm just curious if what's in there right now is being pulled dynamically, or is it just kind of selected out from what we currently have in there?
Yeah, so currently the GitHub definitely has a lot of content. For us right now in the first stage, it's basically selective. So what we wanted is on each area of anomaly detection, we wanted to specifically pick out demos, which might be a good starting point for the audience. But the good part about that is it's basically dynamic in a way is that it's all written in the configuration file. So tomorrow, if I would go and like add another demo into that folder and just spin up the notebook again, it would dynamically render the second demo as well. So what I'm trying to say is we can be selective in what we want to pick and choose, but if you want to add additional content, that can be dynamically rendered onto the web page as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I guess I can go for the next question also for Ankita, the first presentation. So when you talked about the different curated data sets that participants can use have you explored the option of participants feeding in their own data, or if they work with proprietary data, would they have the option of having an on-prem environment? Have you guys explored that option?
Yeah, that's actually a very good suggestion. We haven't specifically explored that option, but that is one of the reasons we gave them, a way to kind of spin up their own collab environment. From their own private access, they can just basically use the notebook and just change the links for, taking in the data sets. So if they have their own CSV files or something, they can use there from their local machines or even from their own cloud environments, plug in those files and basically run the demo for themselves. But it might be a really good suggestion from you to kind of have our own environment. Well, we could give them that functionality as well. So yeah, we haven't played around that, but that's a good idea for the phase 2.